We've always seen that motorcycle engines generate much more power than a car. But how is that possible? What are the differences for this to happen? Originally, it can be said that a 600cc motorcycle generates an average of 120 horsepower, and a car must have more than double the displacement at least 1600cc to reach this value. Of course, always talking about four-stroke engines and without a turbo. Let's look at the constructive differences to make this happen. 1. Aggressive camshaft. Motorcycles usually weigh 4 times less than a car, so they need 4 times less torque. This is achieved by fitting an overlap camshaft that increases RPM and horsepower. The reason is because the higher an RPM at which an engine turns, the shorter the time for gases to enter and withdraw from the cylinder. And also, considering the gases have weight and inertia, they'll need extra time to start moving. Therefore, we open the valves earlier. However, this has a con. When the engine runs at low RPM, the stroke time is longer. This means that when idling, at about 1000 RPM, the early opening of the valves and overlap causes the gases to get out in any direction, either through the intake or the exhaust. Engine efficiency drops, fuel consumption increases, low RPM torque decreases, and for this reason, motorcycles must have higher idle speeds like 1500 RPM. Meanwhile, a car can easily idle at 800 RPM. On the other hand, running more RPM means that the same cylinder can perform more combustion strokes and obtain more power. However, this is not very efficient, since the combustion stroke is very short in time and the gas expansion can't be felt for a long time. Relatively, this causes the motorcycle engine to consume more fuel since efficiency drops. But as the motorcycle is very light, the additional fuel consumption goes unnoticed and ends up getting similar miles per gallon with a car when driving at the same speed. This is Francis. Francis started working as a mechanic in a shop for 12 hours a day. Without prior training, he was forced to disconnect a high-pressure gasoline pump, and when doing so, a jet of fuel hit him in the eyes, leaving him blind for several days and then with little sight. He needs somebody who can fight on his side and pay for that expensive tear in his eye. Somebody that doesn't need expensive prior appointments like many other outdated and slow law firms. And that modern somebody just might be Morgan & Morgan. Morgan & Morgan don't settle for lowball offers. They achieved significant verdicts in the past couple of months for victims involved in life-altering car crashes. $12 million in Florida, 34 times the highest insurance offer, $26 million in Philadelphia, 40 times the highest insurance offer. Francis is worried because he doesn't have the cash to pay for expensive legal fees, but Morgan & Morgan doesn't charge you any sign-up fees or other upfront costs. The fee is free unless you win. So if you've been a victim in a car accident, medical malpractice, workplace injury, or any other personal injury, you may be ready to fight for the millions you may deserve. Morgan & Morgan has modernized the injury law process so you can submit a claim and communicate with your legal team all from your smartphone. Did you know you can start a claim with America's largest injury law firm in just a few clicks? It's so easy. You can start your claim now with Morgan & Morgan at www.forthepeople.com/repairman or click the link in the description. 2. Intake. Another main detail is the way the air enters the cylinders. For space reasons, in a car, the intake manifold is on the side. On a high-speed motorcycle, the intake manifold is at the top. In a car, the ports are curved almost 90 degrees to allow air to enter the cylinder. On a motorcycle, the ports are almost straight, so the air will enter directly, increasing the airflow. The power increases, and above all, it allows the cylinder to be filled well in short periods of time when the engine's revving high. In a car, they always encounter a curve of almost 90 degrees before entering, which reduces airflow. This engine will have poor performance and run out of air near the red line, failing and losing power. Basically, the lack of air intake as RPM increases is the main cause why torque drops in the graph. Point 3. Piston stroke. Focusing on the piston, motorcycle engines usually have less stroke, being 65 diameter by 44 stroke, while cars usually have a square ratio, for example 82 by 82. By having a wide piston with a short stroke, the piston speed reduces. I'll give you a visual example here. As you can see, both crankshafts are rotating at the same speed. You see? 1 RPM, 2 RPM, 3 RPM. But the over-square piston goes slower. Since the piston goes slower, it means we can increase the crankshaft RPM without straining the piston, obtaining less friction and less heat. 4. Big valves. By having a piston with big diameter, we can fit bigger ports and bigger valves. This means more air at high RPM, but decreases performance at low RPM, since we'll have lower airspeed and additionally more air will run out with the overlap of the cam. 5. Long connecting rods. Long connecting rods reduces the angle formed when it's angled. Since there is little angle, the friction against the walls of the cylinder decreases. Less friction means less temperature and wear, and also allows you to have a shorter piston since you don't need a large skirt to stay straight. This also allows more RPM. 6. Individual throttle bodies. The reality is that there are almost no cars with this intake system. It's very rare. An example is the Nissan Skyline GTR. Basically, each cylinder has its own intake throttle body. This gives a very quick and aggressive response to the accelerator pedal. Almost all motorcycles have individual throttle bodies. Cars, on the other hand, use a single large valve for all cylinders. This large intake manifold throttle body gives very good response at low RPM and allows for a very stable idle, where all the cylinders share the same vacuum, which is why cars can stay at less than 1,000 RPM, while motorcycles must exceed 1,500. The throttle bodies are also good when there is no place to install a large intake manifold controlled by a single valve, as is the case with motorcycles. Additionally, the throttle bodies of motorcycles are highly oversized compared to a car, and sometimes, to compensate a little for the low torque, length is added with pipes inside the filter box. 7. Exhaust system. In a car, the available space is normally very limited, and the engine is rarely forced to its maximum capacity. When we go on the highway to work, we usually go at legal speeds, so this reduced and economical exhaust manifold does not affect the performance of the car. Furthermore, with anti-pollution measures, the catalyst is installed as close as possible to the engine to have the highest temperature, which ends up eliminating any possibility of pulse tuning. On a 4-cylinder motorcycle, one looks for maximum power, so much so that in some cases individual catalysts are installed per cylinder to maintain pulse tuning. Also, while being a short vehicle, manufacturers can install beautiful exhaust manifolds that then pass underneath the bike and get out at the back without spending too much money. 8. Piston weight. The 4 pistons of a 600cc bike are smaller than the 4 of a 1600cc car. By being lighter, they can rotate faster without stressing the conrod, allowing a higher redline. Don't forget to check out the comments section. There's always interesting things to read. You can even contribute one yourself. See you next time.